Hello everyone, I'm Saroz Khadayat and currently I work as a senior software engineer at Cotiviti Nepal. The technology stack that I work on is .NET, Docker, Akka.NET and some front-end technologies. So today I will be presenting about multi-Docker containers using Azure App Service. So how we can host multi-Docker containers in Azure App Service will be main priority of this session. And I believe that by the end of the session, you all will be familiar with the Docker multi-containers and how we can deploy them in the Docker Azure App Service. So here are the contents that we'll be discussing today. That is about what is Docker and how Docker architecture works, Docker workflow, Docker Hub, and then we will look into the Docker Compose for multi-container, and then we will host that multi-container Azure App Service. So let me start with what is Docker. So Docker is an open platform for developing, shipping, and running application. So basically just a platform where we'll develop and package up our application and ship it in the running application, ship it as running application. So it is designed to deliver our application faster. With Docker, we can separate our application from our infrastructure and treat infrastructure as like a managed application. So it will help us to ship code faster, test faster, deploy faster, and shorten the cycle between writing code and running code. So we can just code it, we can build an image, and we can deploy it. So here is a Docker architecture image. So what it says is we have a Docker host where we'll host our Docker containers on a Docker daemon, which will run in our OS kernel, and we'll on the Docker daemon will run our containers, and we'll have a client from which we can build, pull, and run the use run commands. And we have another thing is registry. So registry may be local or it can be a public one. So we can push our images in this registry, and we can also share those images to other co-workers as well. So the basic workflow of Docker is we will have a Docker file where we will simply put all the contents that we need to have in our image, in our Docker image. So we'll create a Docker file for that, and from the Docker file we'll build a Docker image. So Docker email now will have all the things that we have specified in the Docker file. So after that we will run a Docker image as a Docker container, and we can then ship that container into our deployment server. So Docker file is simply a text file which will have set of commands and instructions. So these command instructions are like some basic commands are like from, which will give us the base image. So in one image we may have multiple images. So what I mean to say is if we are creating a application that is in .NET and we want to run that application in .NET, we need to use .NET SDK and .NET runtime. So for that we will have .NET SDK images and .NET runtime images. So to make our .NET application image, we will need to package up our Docker image along with the SDK and runtime images. So for that we'll use from command, and then we have run command, which will take the command and its argument to run it from the image. So we have cmd command. So this will help us to run the command in the Docker container itself, and we'll have entry point. So entry point will be the target of the application. So when we start an application in Docker, we just want to say where we want to give the entry point for that application, and we'll have environment where we can set environment variables in Docker file itself. So this one is a basic example of Docker file for ASP.NET app. So we'll look into the demo of this as well. So what is Docker image? Docker image is simply a read-only template from which Docker containers are launched. So Docker container will be launched from the Docker images only. So each image consists of series of layers. I just said about that, and each image will have series of layers, as many as layers as we want. So we will build. It will be built from a Docker file. We'll create a Docker image from the Docker file itself, and we use the command docker build -t image name for creating an image. Now let's go into the container. So what is a container? Container is simply a standardized packaging for software and dependencies. It will isolate apps from each other, and it will run on the same OS kernel, unlike VMs, and it works with all major Linux and Windows server. So we have command to create a Docker container from the Docker image. It goes like docker create and with container name, and we can run the Docker container using docker start. So I will skip Docker mounts part because this will not be included in this series. So this is just about persisting the data of our containers into the Docker volumes. So we use bind mounts, volume, and tmpfs mount to store or to persist the data of the container. So I will not go into details of this, but this is one of the great feature of Docker. So you can explore on this more. So the other thing is Docker Hub. So Docker Hub is a cloud-based repository in which Docker users and partners create, test, store, and distribute container images. So we simply can push our images into Docker Hub, and we can share those images with our other coworkers and partners to work on the same image. So we can also access public images, and we can create our own private repositories for the Docker Hub, and we can also automate build and use webhooks. So if we are going with the CI/CD pipeline with the containers, then we will definitely use webhooks. So we will trigger the CI/CD pipeline after we push the image in the Docker Hub. So it is really very easy to combine the Docker Hub with the CI/CD if you want to move our application from development to server. So now the other tool of the Docker is Docker Compose. So Docker Compose is for defining and running multi-container Docker applications. So if you want to run multiple containers, then we'll need a Docker Compose. It will simply use a YAML file to configure the application services. In this YAML file, we will define multiple containers that we want to run, and it will work in all environments: production, staging, development, and testing with the CI workflows. So with just a single command, we can start and create all the services from our configuration. So simply Docker Compose is a 3-step process. In first step, we will define app environment with Docker file, so it can be reproduced anywhere. After that, we will just define the service that make our app in Docker Compose. So we'll define service in our Docker Compose YAML, and we will run those different containers in an isolated environments. The other thing is Docker Compose up and Compose starts will run the entire app. So this is just a 3-step process where we'll create an app from Docker file. We will create the services from the YAML file, and then we will hit the Docker Compose up command to run all the services. So now let's move into the Azure App Service. So Azure App Service is a HTTP based service for hosting web app, REST API, and mobile backends. I think most of us are aware of this, and it's a basic thing that it will be used for hosting. Azure App will be used for web hosting, and we can develop our application in any of the platform: .NET, .NET Core, Java, Ruby. So it will support any of these, and the application we run will be scalable in both Windows and Linux-based environment on Azure App Service. So Azure App Service can be used for web apps, logic apps, mobile apps, and API apps as well. So we have Azure Resource Group. While creating Azure App we come through this Azure resource group where we need to create the Azure resource group. So what does it mean? So it is a group of related Azure resources. So we want to group all the resources in one group, so that will be needed for our web app service. So it is not just limited to app service, it can be used for mobile service, for the VMs as well. So there is no limitations to only app service. So at this level, admin creates a logical group of resources, that is VMs, storage volume IPs, storage volumes, IP addresses, network interfaces, by assigning them to an Azure resource group. So simply we'll create Azure resource group and we will assign other resources like IP addresses, storage volumes to that Azure group, which will be further used by our app service. And we have another thing, Azure App Service Plan. We come across this. We came across this as well while creating app service. So, well, it is a group of related app service. So it will define the region of the physical server where our app will be hosted, and the amount of storage, RAM, CPU, the physical servers will have. So we will simply have our plan, that may be a tier plan, so a pricing plan, and will be using amount of storage, RAM and CPU as in the service plan itself. So the more resources we use, the higher tier, and the higher will be the price. So for example, we are using 4 GB RAM or core processor, 2 core processor, or 4 core processor. So it will be dependent on that. We will have to pay the price for that. So we define that thing in the Azure App Service Plan. So multi-container app in Azure App Service. So how do we host the multi-container app in Azure App Service? So simply we will deploy web apps composed of multi-Docker containers to app service on Linux. So there is no Windows support for this. We can just do it on Linux. And app service handles capacity provisioning, load balancing, and underlying infrastructure maintenance. So load balancing will be handled by app service itself. We will not have to take care about it manually. With Docker Compose to app service, use powerful app service capabilities such as built-in CI/CD, auto scaling, and intelligent diagnostic. So we can also use other app service capabilities with the multi-container, that is CI/CD and auto scaling as well. So few steps that we'll need to do while deploying a multi-container is we need to create a resource group, we need to create an Azure app plan, we need to create a Docker Compose app, and then we can simply host it. So now let me move into the demo. So I will start with the Docker file that I have. So I have one application which is in .NET, and I have a Docker file of this application, which goes like this. So we are simply containerizing our .NET Core application. So it uses a build image, build SDK for the .NET Core 2.2. So it will pull from this location, Docker Hub. So from this repository, we will get the SDK 2.2, and we'll also need runtime for the .NET 2.2, ASP.NET 2.2. So it will build runtime image from this URL itself. And this is our entry point. So when our application starts, we want it to enter from this DLL. So after we will have Docker file, now what I want to do is I want to create image from this Docker file. So to create an image, I have command docker build t -t, and we'll have name of the image. So I would like to give this portal _ image. So since we are in the same location where our Docker file is, so I will just hit dot after this, and it will take the Docker file from that location, and it will create an image. So it's restoring.
Can you zoom out?
Is this fine?
Yeah.
So now let's see Docker images. So we will have this Docker demo images. So we have portal image here, and it has tag latest. So now if we want to run the single container, then we can just create a container here, or we can directly run using Docker run, and we will give port address in which we want to run. But since we are not looking into the single container right now, so we'll just push this to the Docker hub. So what now I want to do is I want to push this into Docker hub, and then I will pull from the Docker hub and will host into the web service. So to tag this to Docker hub, I have command docker tag. So image name is portal underscore image latest, and my repo is Saroz Khadayat slash. So let me see. So here is my Docker hub. So I want to push this image into this repository portal image. So I already have there one image which is sorry. So I already have one image inside this which is tagged as v1 right now. So I will now create another image as v2. So now image 2. So this is latest image I have tagged into the v2. Now I will push this image into the repo. Okay, so now we have the Docker image that we just created in our Docker hub. So now what I want to do is I will create a Docker compose file. So Docker compose file is used for multi-container. So I will go into the Docker compose file. So my Docker compose file is in So here is my Docker compose file I have already created. So this one is for the image v1. So I will just change this to v2. So what we have multiple services here. So one service is web portal, then another one is DB service. So DB service will pull the image from this server, this location, which will be the SQL Server 2017 latest version, and will can name this as DB. So we have the environment variables specified as SA password, which will be the password of our SQL server, and this will be the license agreement we have accepted yes as yes. So while installing the server, it will ask for the license agreement. So we have given it as yes, and here is the port that will be used for this SQL server, that is 1433, and I have created one network. That is this is a feature of Docker. So I have created one network called my network, and I have assigned both of my services to the same network. So my web portal is also in the my network, and DB is also in the same network. So our web portal also depends upon the our DB service. So I have written DB here, and I have exposed my web portal 80 on 80 port. So Here I have written 5100. This is the port of our host machine and this is the port of the container. So what I am doing is I am exposing my application from 80 port in container, and I am mapping it to the 5100 in my host machine. So after doing this, so what I want to do is now I want to, so this is our Azure CLI. So I can now create, I have already logged in into my Azure CLI, so I will not have to log in here. Uh, so I can create Azure group. Here I can give a group name. So for example,
Just a second. Can you zoom out the screen?
oh, sorry. Is it okay now?
Yeah.
Okay. So to create a group, so we have the command az group create. So we'll give a group name here. Let us say webinar group, demo group, and then I can give location here. Let's say it is Central US. We can do these things from the web portal, Azure portal itself as well, but I'm doing it from using this Azure CLI. Network connection. This is because of the network issue, or
So in the meantime, if you have any question related to the these topics, you can type on the QA session right on the panel.
so I have some bad quality network over here. That's why it is failing. Please make sure your network connection. So this is because of the network connection. Sorry about this. So after we create, so I already have this app service plan created in my Azure account. So let's not create this again. So to create app service, we'll have to type this Azure group. Sorry, to create the Azure group, we'll have to type this command, and we can create Azure group up from this. So to create Azure app service plan, we will have the command AG app service plan create. So we'll give the service plan name here, service plan, and then we'll give a resource group name here that we just created. Since we did not create it, let's say it may be test, and after that we will give the SKU, which is the I mean, which of the pricing premium, which of the tier you want to take. So let's say I want to take premium one with 2 cores. So this will be the service plan, and I want to run this in the Linux machine. So I will just give it as is Linux. So this will create a service plan for the Linux. It will be the pricing of P1 B2. So after we do this, we'll be able to have a service plan. And since we have network issue right now, so I will then after this we can just directly create a Azure app service. So let's this is the command to create Azure app service. So we have AGW app, web app, which will create a web app under the resource group of my resource group, and we'll have plan named as ASP this one, and we'll have the name of this application webinar app container webinar app config file. Sorry, what is this? Webinar app test, and we'll have multi container config type, which will be of type compose. since we will have type compose, that means we will be using multi containers, and we'll need to give the docker compose YML file to this. So I'm in the location where my docker compose file is persisting. So in webinar I have docker compose YML file, which I just showed to you, which is this one, and I'm giving that location to this application. So it will create a new app using this docker compose file, in which we will have database server and the web portal as different containers, but in the single app service. So that application will communicate with this DB server and fetch the data from this to show in the web application. So let's see if it works here. So this is okay. So since demo is not working because of this network issue, so I will show how it will work. So for example, this was the demo app that I created similarly the way I showed to you guys. And this will be the output of this application. So seems like it is working now. So let's see if it creates a new app called webinar app test. Yeah, so we are able to create our application. So this will, so it has created app. So this is our host name for the app. So we can copy this and we'll run here. So our app should be hosted by now. It will have two containers in it. One will be database server. So now I am creating database server and the web application as different containers and hosting in the Azure app service, but it could be combination of any other containers. So you can use Redis servers, or you can use ELK stack along with your web application. So you can have any containers in that Docker Compose and host it to the Azure websites. So meanwhile, let's look into the app we created. So this is our app. So this is our output. So this data is from the database that the data server that we hosted in that Docker Compose file. We have written the to host the database server. So this data is from the database server, and this is our there is another container that is web app, which will communicate with that database server and fetch data, and will show it on the UI. So if we look into the web, this is our app service. So we will have here container settings menu. So inside this we'll have our Docker Compose file that we just uh, created. So it is in here, configuration file. So we have the image file, image from this this location, this location Docker Hub, and we have named this as portal container, and here is our same Docker Compose file. So we can also see the logs in here. So while creating this app, so it was successful. It was successfully initialized, so we were able to browse it. So that's all from me. If you guys have any question, I would like to take it now.
So basically, in Azure, so what is the main advantage to host the multi-container Docker there over there using app service?
So there may be this cases for which we do not want different servers to run. For example, there may be a Redis cache server, or so there may be some testing application you are creating. Of course, it will not be feasible for the larger applications. While you are creating, you will go to Kubernetes if you are doing the containers. But if there are small applications that you don't want to have different SQL server or different servers for all of the APIs that you are creating. So you want them to combine in one simple server, and you want to host it in the same server, and you want to use them as a container. This is the best solution to do that.